legal authorities are at war with us, or we are at war with each other. Indeed, barely a day goes by where we're not hearing about another shooting of a young black man by a police officer. And so I choose as my topic today, in these, the United States of America, act like a citizen, think like a cop. Act like a citizen, think like a cop. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The preamble to the Constitution, the very first sentence says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and prosperity. We do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." The very first phrase is a collective phrase, "We the people." And the two primary purposes of the Constitution are establish a justice and ensure domestic tranquility. And in the various provisions of the Constitution that come after that, the Constitution describes the relationship between the government's authority to enforce the laws and the rights of the citizens. Now, on a local level, the government's laws enforcement authority is exercised by police officers. And so what I'm going to try to talk about today are the nature of police-citizen encounters, the rights of citizens, the way to know and properly assert your rights in encounters with law enforcement officers. And because this is Youth Sunday, I will conclude with some dating advice for young people and 10 rules to remember. In the vast majority of police-citizen encounters, police are there to protect and serve. They protect and patrol our neighborhood. They respond to emergency calls for assistance. They respond to crime scenes. These encounters are where the relationship between the law enforcement officer and citizens is one of cooperation. But I'm here today to talk about a very different kind of encounter, where one is a person of interest, a suspect, or under arrest. And in those situations, the court have defined those interactions as adversarial relations. And by that, that's not to suggest that it has to be hostile, but it recognizes that the objectives of the law enforcement officers is different, indeed in conflict sometimes, under the Constitution with the rights of the citizens. In those situations where a person is a person of interest, a suspect, or under arrest, the officer is suspicious to begin with. That is their job. They are suspicious because they believe that a crime has committed, and so in that encounter, the officer is actually looking for evidence of a crime. And when I say looking for evidence, based on what you say, what he sees, it's based on all of his senses. The citizen's goal is different. The citizen's goal and our goal is twofold. Number one, to make it home safely. Amen. Number two, not catch a case, or if you do, at the very least, to have a fighting chance. That's the citizen's goal. The strategy in accomplishing that goal is to take control of the encounter and do not give up any more information or evidence than you're legally required. Now, the officers are trained and they have protocols for different situations. Most of us are familiar with the protocol of the traffic stop. You know what happens. You're driving on the highway, all of a sudden they pull up on you quickly, you see the blue lights, you pull over. Once you pull over, they sit there for a minute, and then they approach you with their hands on their taser or their gun. Police officers have protocols for different situations. And I'm here today to suggest to you that we as citizens should have protocols for their protocols.
Amen.
Now, in preparing for this, I sat down with a retired police officer and said, well, when I talk to people, what is it that you want them to know? What is the one thing that they need to know as they enter into an encounter with a law enforcement officer? And he said, the one thing that they need to know is that despite their uniform, police officers, all law enforcement officers are human. They're human. And what that means, they have all of them, no matter where they come from, they have 5 characteristics. Number one, he said that most officers have egos and they are competitive. Many of them have participated in competition sports. Therefore, they feel like they need to be in control. And it's part of their job where they're looking for compliance with their authority. Number 2, theirs is a dangerous job. Self-survival is the strongest human instinct. Officers know that they can be killed on any service call by anyone. Officers don't, when they approach us, they don't know if they're approaching a model citizen or a psycho killer looking for his next police officer. So what he says is we must communicate with them both physically and verbally that we're not a danger. Number 3, he says officers, all of them, because they're human, they have human biases. That's not to say they're all racist, but they have biases. Their biases are based on whether they perceive someone to be either a physical threat or a flight risk. And those biases, for example, based on size. Someone who's a larger person may be perceived as a greater threat than a smaller person. Their gender, perhaps men and women are viewed at a different threat level. And yes, race is a factor also. How one dresses. If you're dressed in sporting gear, you're perceived as more of a flight risk than someone who's dressed in business gear. 4th, they're affected by your attitude and your conduct. Even the most professional officer might become more aggressive or hostile if they feel that you're threatening them or their authority is being challenged. And lastly, and most importantly, because they are human, they all bring their own history, their own baggage to that encounter. You don't know how their day started. Perhaps they might have had an argument with their children or their wife at home. Maybe when they got to their office, they got chewed out by their supervisor. Maybe on the call just before yours, it was a very emotional or threatening call. You don't know. Maybe they may have been on the job for a while and have a little burnout. You don't know. So we have to be prepared for the baggage that they bring to the encounter. I want you to take a look now at a clip